Welcome to another episode of the Sports Sentiment. I am your host, Nick Urias, and we are back once again talking college football, entering week 12 of the Mountain West slate. And we got San Jose State versus Nevada on deck in Reno. And to talk Spartans and Wolfpack out there at Mackay Stadium, we got Chris Murray joining the pod this week, covers Nevada Wolfpack athletics for Nevada Sportsnet. Chris, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Well, look, I know the matchup with the 3-6 San Jose State Spartans and the 1-8 Nevada Wolfpack probably not on the top of everybody's list on the jam-packed high leverage week 12 college football slate. But I mean, just diving into this matchup a little bit. I mean, let's just chat about it because it's not been the season that both teams have envisioned. There was some high hopes for San Jose State on the preseason polls, but that obviously hasn't happened. Nevada kind of picked on the bottom half of the polls themselves, and it's kind of reflected that just coming off a 51-14 loss Nevada did at Utah State. Just what's the state of maybe just the team and the program right now entering week 12? What's kind of the momentum that the coaching staff's looking for in this one?
They just need to get some positivity going into 2026. I mean, you could look at this season alone and be 1-8 overall, 0-5 in the Mountain West, and that's bad enough. But this is really year 4 of struggles for Nevada. Since 2022, the Wolfpack is just 8-38 overall. They've won only 2 Mountain West games the last 4 seasons. Now, only 2 of those years have come under the current head coach, Jeff Choate. The prior 2 were under Ken Wilson, who was fired after 2 seasons. So there's not been a lot of positivity in terms of results for Nevada the last 4 years. And specifically this year, I think Jeff Choate was very confident that Nevada would be able to get to a bowl, would be able to build some of that momentum as he tries to get this program back to where it used to be under Chris Ault and Jay Norvell. And it just hasn't happened. So can you get a win or 2 over the final 3 games? You look at home against San Jose State, at Wyoming, and then home against UNLV, your big rival. If you had to give odds, really those first 2 games are most likely where you're going to be able to score an upset. But if that's going to happen, Nevada needs to play much better than it has over the last month of the season, specifically on offense. Nevada, just a really brutal showing against Utah State. They were down 41-0 at halftime. And then you go about a month prior to that, they were down 35-0 at halftime to San Diego State. So 2 really, really lopsided losses in the last 4. And then 2 more competitive games at New Mexico. That's a game Nevada probably should have won, lost by 2. And then you look at a game against Boise State where Nevada's defense played really well, but the offense mustered only 3 points. So can Nevada find a higher level than what we've seen the last month? That's the big question.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I talked to Coach Choate during the preseason, and it was one of those things when you're kind of crunching up the schedule. It's like, okay, like especially in that non-conference, like this could either go 1-3 or 3-1, right? Because you kind of have all those up in the air games, like the 2 Conference USA games, right? And the coaching staff within San Jose State, kind of just talked about it themselves, like, hey, the Wolfpack have kind of been on the wrong side of these 1-score games, right? I know the Western Kentucky final score, I think, is a little misleading because of the onside kick recovery for a touchdown. So, even though the win-loss ratio may not state that, there's been, I feel like some skewed final scores in the process there. But, I'm curious to get your take just on the quarterback position because it's kind of been a revolving door. Right, Chubba Purdy was kind of their gadget guy last year behind Brendan Lewis. He's kind of got the keys to the offense and then kind of pivoted a different direction here with freshman quarterback Carter Jones inserted in the second half of that Fresno State game, I believe. So I know it's been a inconsistency from the freshman, but I guess what are you trying to gather from him here over these next final 3 games here? Because he's a high upside guy, right? He was highly recruited by this program.
Yeah, and I think Nevada really believes in Carter Jones. I just think the results thus far have not been very good. Now, he did come in the second half against Fresno State, and he played really well in that half. He led Nevada to a couple of touchdowns and really got the Wolfpack back in that game. He played really well against New Mexico, didn't make a lot of mistakes, was able to get the ball vertically down the field. But outside of those 2 showings, it's been very difficult. You look at his 4 starts thus far, 1 passing touchdown, 7 interceptions. And that was really the reason that Chubba Purdy got benched. Nevada's first in the nation in turnovers, tied for second in the nation in offensive touchdowns. So you really want that reversed. 24 turnovers against just 11 offensive touchdowns. For me, Nevada has a better offense when Chuba Purdy is out there. Yes, there weren't a lot of wins, and yes, there were some turnover issues. But you look at the non-conference schedule, the first game at Penn State, you can kind of throw that away. That's when Penn State was thought to be a national contender. Then next week you beat Sac State. The offense didn't look great, but you got the win. The week after that, Chuba Purdy's benched. AJ Bianco starts that game, but Chuba Purdy comes off the bench, and he has Nevada up 13-0 with less than 10 minutes to go. And things really just fell apart over the last 10 minutes of that game. They lose 14-3. Chuba Purdy starts the next game at Western Kentucky. Nevada really dominates the first half of that game. They're up at halftime after turning the ball over twice inside the opponent's 10-yard line. If you convert those into touchdowns, Nevada wins that game pretty easily, and then you're feeling a little bit better about yourself. It didn't work out that way. The first half against Fresno State was very poor with some early turnovers, and it's kind of been Carter Jones's job since then. Carter Jones was pulled pretty early last week against Utah State. Nevada just didn't want his confidence to be shook when that game was already kind of out of hand. And Chuba Purdy came in. He threw a couple of touchdowns. And the offense is a lot more dynamic running the ball with Chuba Purdy. He's the best athlete on the team. Nevada was averaging almost 200 yards per game running the ball with Chuba Purdy as a starter. Since he hasn't been starting, it's under 100 rushing yards per game because you don't have that dynamic read option kind of offense. So they are going to start Carter Jones against San Jose State. If I were Jeff Choate and I had to win a game this week, I would start Chuba Purdy, but it looks like they want to try and give the freshman a few more opportunities, try and get him a little bit more developed and comfortable because he's probably going to be the guy in 2026. Although, again, if I'm Nevada, I feel like I need to bring in a transfer portal quarterback. That's not something they did this year. They kind of trusted that their quarterbacks would be able to handle the job, and that just hasn't been the case.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, you kind of stole my thunder there. I was going to go with who's going to start in this game just because, things have just kind of been up in the air and they're kind of just starving for a win at this portion of the season, looking for some positive momentum. I feel Nevada the past few years has always kind of been predicated on relying on their ground game. I go back to years ago when you guys had the dynamic running back in Toa Tawa and, just a fun guy to watch. And I know a lot of Mountain West fans loved him, but this backfield with Caleb Ramzier and Herschel Turner. Turner's still an underclassman. I feel like he could be a high upside piece if he elects to stay in the future. Ramzier's a senior, I believe. So just what have you seen from, this ground game? It might not be the vintage Nevada, ground attack that, people have seen with Toa Tawa, but when this run game is moving the sticks and it's going, kind of opens everything else up, right?
Yeah, and that's going to be huge when you have a true freshman quarterback who struggled with turnovers. If you can get the run game going, then it's so much easier for him. But Nevada has not been able to throw the ball well enough to keep teams honest. They're stacking the box. They're saying, okay, if you want to try and throw it, you haven't proven that you can do it. So when you're running into an 8-person box and now you don't have that threat at quarterback like Chuba Purdy, not that Carter Jones is not a good athlete, he's just not going to run the read option as well as Chuba Purdy, then I think it becomes more difficult to run the ball. And we've seen that over the last 6 games. Nevada's not been able to get the ground game going, which is putting more pressure on the quarterback, which is putting more pressure on kind of 3rd and long situations. And this team from a wide receiver position is not built to have success throwing the ball on 3rd and long. Now, last year, they had Cortez Braham Jr., who transferred to Memphis along with Brendan Lewis and Drew Watts, 3 of Nevada's best players. They also had Jaden Smith, who was in NFL training camps this offseason. So it had pretty dynamic wide receivers, and this year that just has not been the case. They have limited NIL money to spend. It looked like they spent it on the offensive line and hope that their young wide receivers would be able to develop, and that just really hasn't happened. So the quarterback play hasn't been very good. Wide receiver play hasn't been very good, and then that impacts the run game because if you can't threaten them vertically with your passing attack, then you're running into stacked boxes. So yes, I do think Nevada being able to run the ball is going to be huge, and not only this game, but the next 2 after that. If they're not able to run the ball, then there's just really not a lot of proof that they can throw the ball effectively down the field. What I've seen from Carter Jones in practice is pretty impressive. He just hasn't been able to carry that over into games, and that's understandable. He's a true freshman. He's 18 years old. In an ideal world, he would not have been put into this situation, but he is in this situation, and he's trying to kind of keep his head above water. I mean, Nevada's averaging 14 points per game. Like, that's not going to win you anything. And 11 of the offensive touchdowns, 4 of them have been late in the game against blowouts against 2nd and 3rd string. Like, against top line defenses, Nevada's not been able to drive the ball the length of the field. A lot of their touchdowns have come when they've been in plus territory after a special teams or a defensive takeaway. So I don't know how Nevada is able to win this game against San Jose State unless the Spartans turn it over and put Nevada's offense in advantageous positions, which we have seen. That has been a problem for San Jose State. So Nevada's defense needs to get a couple of takeovers early in this one.
Well, if there is a get right game for the Nevada offense, it can most certainly be against San Jose's defense. They've been one of the worst pass defenses, not only in the Mountain West but in all of the FBS. They're coming off a 26-16 loss against Air Force this past Saturday. And that game featured 3 turnovers for the Spartans, which that's been something that the coaching staff's just been preaching. Like, if we kind of just get out of our own way, like on offense, even though we kind of have these great, offensive outputs from a box score standpoint, we kind of just get out of our own way, who knows where we're at. And of course, if we make a couple field goals as well along the way. Walker Egan exited the game for San Jose State early on in like the second drive, I believe. Xavier Ward came in to finish the drive, fumbled in the red zone. Then Egan returned. I thought he never really looked right. The coaching staff, Craig Stutzman, the offensive coordinator, kind of said like, yeah, he was a little bit limited. I personally thought with his arm strength, if you watch the game, just a lot more underthrows than what we've been accustomed to with Egan, I feel like. So I feel like that's something going into the game that could be, something. I should mention Egan's had a shoulder injury, suffered one versus Wyoming. Now he did come back the following week versus Utah State and looked pretty sharp. Didn't really seem to bother him, but that's been an injury that he has suffered this season. So just something to keep an eye on, but still a dynamic air raid offense here with San Jose State. And, I have to say, Chris, you've been following this matchup for some time. I know you've been with Nevada for some time. This matchup, for whatever the personnel, provides, is always a good one. We've had some close games. Last year was a pretty good one in San Jose. 2 years ago was a good one in San Jose. The 2020 matchup was good. I don't know what it is because, San Jose State, seems like they have the better record when these two teams ultimately play. It's still kind of a coin flip game the way I always look at it heading into it, right?
Yeah, they played a lot of close games. Brandon Talton, former Nevada kicker, had 2 40-yard plus field goals to beat San Jose State during his career. You mentioned that 2020 game. Talton actually missed a very short field goal going into halftime. Nevada was still up by 10 at halftime, ended up losing that game by 10. San Jose State goes on to win the Mountain West Championship. If Nevada wins that game, that's probably the Wolfpack spot in the championship game against Boise State, and maybe that changes things. Maybe Nevada wins that game and Jay Norvell gets support, and Jay Norvell ends up staying at Nevada instead of going to Colorado State after the 2021 season, and then the Wolfpack doesn't fall into this malaise that it's been in. So, there's been a lot of good games between the teams historically, and I feel like, Nevada's going to lose a couple of its top rivals with this Pac-12 Mountain West split. Boise State, Fresno State, UNLV. That's kind of been Nevada's 3 big rivals for the last 40, 50 years. 2 of them are going over to the Pac-12 in Boise State and Fresno State, and they don't have any future games on the schedule. So the Wolfpack will kind of be looking around saying, who are our new rivals? Obviously, you still have UNLV, but I feel like San Jose State makes a ton of sense geographically. They've been in the same conference for a long time. I don't know that Wyoming and Air Force and New Mexico make a lot of sense as like a traditional rival. Maybe Hawaii a little bit. Their former Wolfpack assistant wide receiver coach Timmy Chang, not with the Rainbow Warriors, so they're still pretty friendly as programs. So it's been a good rivalry, and I can see it kind of building up over the next decade plus as these kind of teams stay in the same conference and wave goodbye to a lot of schools that they kind of are rivals with currently.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up, right? With the whole changing landscape, I'm kind of a little bit more of a traditionalist, even though I'm much younger and like I haven't been around for a lot of these rivalries, but there's just something different about it. Like when San Jose and Fresno get together, or when Nevada and UNLV get together, like you got to throw the records out the window, and you just got to play the game on the field. So I'm right there with you, and I'm very excited just to see how it emerges because a lot of the universities and just the athletic programs are just really, especially with the Pac-12 and the Mountain West split, are some of these teams are just not going to agree because it just might not be beneficial for one or the other. So very interested to see how all that translates. Pivoting to the Wolfpack defense, I feel like Jeff Choate always finds a way to get the most out of his defenses. I go back to that week 1 last year or week 0 last year versus SMU, and you almost pull off the upset in week 0, and of course SMU goes on to the college football playoff. And I just go back and look at that game, and I'm like, man, these guys are grinding and playing for a full 60. It seems like Jeff Choate is still kind of getting the most out of this group despite the win-loss record. Dylan Labarera has been awesome. Tackle leader with 75 tackles, sack leader with 6.5. What have you seen from number 32 in a Wolfpack uniform?
Yeah, so he's actually from Redding, California, so Northern California. Went to Butte College for a year, was at Nevada last year, and really didn't see much from him until last month of the season. He did really, really well, and this year he's been fantastic. I mean, he probably should have been a preseason All-American with how he played. I would say he's kind of tailed off a little bit in terms of tackles for loss over the last couple of games. Jonathan Maldonado, number 9, is also a really good defensive end. So that's the strength of Nevada's defense. It's the defensive line and, specifically on the exterior with the edge guys. I think you look at the linebackers, they've been okay. And I think you look at the secondary, they've kind of been okay as well. I think overall, Nevada's kind of misleading in terms of the defensive stats. The Wolfpack's defense has played pretty well for the majority of the season. It has not gotten a lot of help from the offense. It's been on the field a lot. All those turnovers has put it in some really, really difficult positions. Obviously, last week's game against Utah State gave up 51 points. The week before that, though, they held Boise to 20 points, and they really, really dominated that game. Boise had the ball inside the Nevada red zone a couple of times based on turnovers, and the Wolfpack just getting stop after stop after stop after stop. So I think the question is, how much fire does that unit have left? It's kind of been hung out to dry by the offense and just by how the season has gone. And it hasn't been a really high turnover team. Like, it hasn't gotten a lot of takeaways. And I think that's kind of the weakness of San Jose State's defense is, can you go and get those takeaways? If you're not able to do that, you're probably not going to have a lot of success. So you at least have to be good in the red zone. I think San Jose is going to be able to move the ball pretty well. Can Nevada be good on third down? And can they have 2 or 3 splash plays where they really make a difference and give Nevada's offense the ball in plus territory? So I think on the whole, the defense has been really good. I think Dylan LaBarbera is really fun to watch. I think Jonathan Maldonado is a really good player as well. Both those guys are juniors. They could both be playing in the Power 4 next year. We don't know if they're going to enter the portal or not, but that really is not only the strength of the defense, but really the strength of the entire team is that line and how they played for the majority of the season.
Yeah, most certainly. You kind of touched on it a little bit as, just as far as just the keys for the Wolfpack in this game. I guess I'll hit it off here with the San Jose State perspective. Danny Scudero, I know he took a visit to Nevada. Was a San Jose kid, came from Sac State last year. So obviously, when I was chatting with him early on this season, he kind of made it a point of emphasis. Like, being home is obviously kind of big for me. But Scudero's number 1 in America in receiving yards with 1,126. Only had 5 receptions for 41 yards. A little bit shocking given, just Air Force's pass defense and how poor it's been this year. I will mention he hasn't registered back-to-back games with less than 100 receiving yards, so it could be a get-right game. But the way defenses are playing right now, that is something that is kind of up in the air as far as, just his workload. San Jose State does have lots of depth, obviously, at wide receiver with Leland Smith. He's coming off a 140-yard receiving yard performance, and then Kyrie Scholes as well. So interesting to see, just who ends up being the impact piece in this one. I could see a Leland Smith, another big Leland Smith game for SJSU. But to me, the big one is just red zone efficiency for SJSU. They weren't very good in the red zone, just kind of on the road, especially in the Utah State loss, just settling for too many field goals. Last week, they settled for too many field goals. So I guess just finishing in the red zone for the Spartans, is kind of a big one. And then, obviously a clean turnover game. Like, when this team, just because of how many possessions and their quick strike ability, Nevada, I feel like, is just frankly going to get more possessions in this game than probably in other games that they've had. Like they'll have more chances on offense, I feel like, to score. And that's just based on the way that San Jose State plays. You're going to probably, you very well might see 3-4 play drives in some spots just because they might hit a 70-yard explosive in this game. So a clean turnover game from SJSU, I think it would be very important in this game. And, San Jose State still has bowl aspirations as well. As poor as the season's gone, I think it's fair to say they've been the most disappointing team in the Mountain West, just given the preseason expectations. But, regardless of all of that, this is San Jose State. I think they would feel still very good if they got themselves another bowl game in their resume as well under Coach Ken. So that they're still playing for something, this group, they're still, despite, being out of the Mountain West championship race, which I think is something the fan base very much, valued heading into the year, especially the way that the schedule broke. A bowl game is still very much in the team's goals. I feel like heading into this one. Chris, I know you kind of touched on it, but I guess what is your number one thing for Nevada? Not only this game, but I guess just going forward here, because Jeff Choate, he's 3-10 going back to he's 3-10 last year with that record. He only has the one win this year. I personally think he was a much better option compared to Ken Wilson. I think he's got them much more competitive than he had with the previous regime. But I guess what's the momentum here for the final 3 games for this program, just to kind of get it back to winning ways before we head to this new wave of the Mountain West?
Well, I think you got to send a message to your returning players. If you can go out and win 2 games, and maybe one of them is against UNLV, the big rival, where you get a Fremont Cannon Trophy, which is about 450 pounds. If you win it, maybe that's a signal to some of the guys like, hey, we are getting it turned around. It's taken longer than we thought, but there is some success that if you come back, maybe we can build on it. Now, if you go out there, you get blown out by San Jose, you lose to Wyoming, you get blown out by UNLV, and the cannon is red for the 4th straight year, then what is the message to the returning players? The Herschel Turners, as you mentioned, the Dylan LaBarberas, Jonathan Maldonados, Carter Jones, people who may have some options in the transfer portal if they seek those. So I think for this game in particular, Nevada needs to get off to a fast start. I mean, 41-0 down at halftime. They were down by 3 touchdowns basically 10 minutes into that game against Utah State. You go back to that San Diego State game, another disastrous start. Punt return for a touchdown right out of the gates, an interception, and you're down 2-3 scores. Like, this offense cannot come back from 2-3 scores down. It just can't. Not going to happen. So I think the first half and the first quarter in particular and the first drive are going to be very important. You mentioned those explosive San Jose State can drop on you, where Nevada has Utah State in a 3rd and long last game. They get a quick first down in that position. The next play, it's like a 60-yard touchdown pass because the nickel falls down. Then you're down 7-0. Then you throw an interception, and the game's basically over. So Nevada has been competitive against some teams that are better than it, Boise State, Fresno State, New Mexico, and then it's been blown out in some other games. So can you, in that first 15 minutes, at least give yourself a flicker of hope that you can stay in the game and maybe pull something off in the 4th quarter? I think that's going to be very important in this one.
Well, San Jose State's won the last 2 matchups and 3 of the last 4, and interestingly enough, the Spartans haven't won in Reno in 25 years. I couldn't believe it when I saw that number. But 46 meeting happening this Saturday at 12:30 Pacific at Mackay Stadium. Chris, appreciate your time today for coming on. I know you're doing a lot of stuff for Nevada Sportsnet. It's crossover season, so you got the back end of the football season along with all the crazy amount of basketball coverage. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, NevadaSportsnet.com. So we also stream a lot of the Wolfpack games. So actually today's Nevada game against Southern Illinois will be on our website. So yeah, NevadaSportsnet.com for all your Wolfpack needs.
There you have it. Chris, thank you so much for coming on. Once again, I am your host, Nick Urias, and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast.